This week, the main thing we're going to do is take our inheritance hierarchy and put it into an application. And to do that, we want to do something interactive. We want to be able to get user input from this. Now, generally speaking, when we get user input, there's two common ways I'd go about doing this. There's command line interfaces and there's graphical user interfaces. We could be building either one of these, depending on what the application is. And when we say these two options, there's not to say that don't be limited in thinking that one of them is literally a command line and one of them is literally a standalone application. We can have web applications that could enclose either one of these. It's a pattern by which users communicate with the system. It's not a specific solution, though we are going to build specific solutions here. So the point being is, I could have a little box like you see on the left, command prompt, where I can type in commands, even if it is part of a web application or a GUI over on the right. I can have a little part at the bottom. I can just type stuff in. There's reasons why I might want to do that. I can't really exactly put a graphical user interface in the command line prompt, but I can build, obviously, an application that does things like off on the right. So the GUI development side of it's for the next class. We're not doing that here. We're not going to be explaining how to do that here in any real notion. The last week, what we're going to be doing here is graphics, which is a little bit of tie-in to some GUIs, but just know you'll get a chance to play with this. You are not being asked to build this now, for sure. That's not part of what's on the plate. What we're going to do alternatively is the command line. And this is basically a prompt where the user has hands on keyboards. They're not looking at a mouse. They're not going back and forth. You can put your hands on the keyboard, in your QWERTY type, finger ready typing position and leave them there, not have to move there. And so you're going to prompt the user through text prompts, and they're going to type in prompts in return, type in text in return, and typically the enter key signals, I'm done typing, now go to do something. Got to think back on a GUI. A GUI largely is going to be the user does whatever they want to until they press a button. So I can type in 3 or 4 or 5 things. I can sliders and drop down boxes and radio buttons, all this sort of stuff. Where command line, I have to walk you through each step of it. And that's going to have some implications on design as well as the structure of what our code's going to be. So they're really two different paradigms. So this class, we're going to focus on the command line. The question comes up is, why do we have these two? Well, the great part about GUIs is they're visual. They really should be obvious in how they're used. See a bunch of boxes there, and I can go through and see all the fields. And they should have some nice user-friendly ways to help me. I should be able to clear my fields, or if I make a mistake, I can keep the fields that are valid in there, or tweak only things that I need to. Where a command line is something that requires a little bit more expertise. So I have to have clear instructions how I use it. But it does allow me some quick data entry. It allows me to do some really quick, smart processing on things and be able to pick up things quicker. And then I can have very quick input-outputs inside of it. So as a novice user, you really do prefer GUIs. You prefer something big and visual and not requiring me to have a whole lot of understanding of how the system works. As an expert, experts tend to prefer command lines. If you think of any movie you've seen, like of a trading house, you see people typing away. If you've flown on an airplane, most of the time there, the people who are looking up information, they're typing like crazy. There's some airlines that have started to move to some graphical user interface stuff, but especially back in the day, everything was typed in. And you can pull out a ton of information with some real simple keystrokes if you know what to do. And a lot of programs really do prefer command line applications, and thus that's the point that I don't have to throw out the ability to do command line. So just simply when you're changing directories and deleting files and saving files and moving files and searching and grepping and things like that, all those things that you can do in Unix or Windows or Linux or whatever at the command line are capabilities I could build into my user interface. I can allow somebody to type in commands and process them accordingly. And we're going to see a little bit of how to do some of that here in this class. Mostly what we're going to do is just quick response things and breaking up quick responses. But the question comes up for you, which one's easier to build? And what I want to try and put in your head is none of the above. They both have their interesting aspects. A GUI is typically quick to get up and running. I can basically throw some fields together and throw them all together pretty quickly to get a screen in front of somebody, where command line is a lot more work to sequence that all out. I have to prompt and get data in, prompt and get data in, prompt and get data, and I have to manage that flow. But from a usability standpoint, the GUI is very simple to get started with. I can do more quicker with a command line because I'm an expert, especially if I work on my expertise. I don't have to click and move around as much. Both of these applications require it to be robust. Whether I'm building a GUI or whether I'm building a command line, I should be doing things like data validation. And that logic is essentially identical. When I have a field, if I want to determine if the field is a number, if it's a valid number, if the name is a valid name, if it doesn't have incorrect characters in it, and things like that, that logic is the same across both of them. So either of these applications could be equally robust and have a similar number of lines of code depending on what's desirable. I rarely end up with users who are satisfied with simple GUIs. They typically want very robust, interesting applications. They're going to want things that are dynamic with many pages, and at that point you almost start to get to something similar to a command line. And with some of the approaches we'll take within this class, we can actually simplify a lot of the work we have going on in the command line. We can make things much easier to a large degree within that. All right, so the key to understanding command lines is going to be using a little bit of input and output. We're going to be learning more about I/O in the next class. This class will introduce to you the scanner object. It's not my favorite class for dealing with this stuff, but you'll probably see this used frequently, and I'll show you a couple alternatives as we go forward with this. But the scanner object is typically an object I can use to pull in data quickly. So when I want to build a GUI, you're going to have something like this where I build a scanner object, and then I have a prompt, type quit to exit. I can do that anytime. And then I say, type something for me to echo. And the way the scanner object works is I go get the next input that the user types in. And so it basically pauses and waits for the user to type something in and then hit the enter key. And so as long as that value that they typed in is not quit, I'm basically going to spit it back out, type something for them to print again, and then go get the next line. And then at some point I'll be finished and say thanks. That's a little example of the scanner class. It's the biggest thing about the scanner class is it really is waiting for user input. It's waiting for the user to type. That's where the next comes in. There's more capabilities of the scanner class, and I want to give you a warning. There's a lot of fancy methods like next integer that'll go off and get the next integer. The problem with this method is it expects the user to be perfect. It expects an integer every single time. And so we don't always know that the users are going to be smart about it. We don't always know that the users are going to actually type in an interface. So my preference is just to use the next and then use common validation mechanisms because I can write them and share them across multiple applications. And we'll see how we can do that. But there are ways to be able to approach getting numbers and different types of values through the scanner. And we'll look at some of those approaches here. I just want you to stop and think about your approach and understand that you solve the problem is not necessarily the only way to solve a problem. And so when you go through and look at these videos, consider the different ways we'll solve these problems and which one you really want to use. Try them out and then pick one or several of them to try at different points. Your code doesn't have to be perfectly common this time. You can try different things out. Just add a comment inside of there that says, I want to try out using the scanner next in feature, so I'm doing that here. So that's what I encourage you to do, is play with this. Get your assignment done, but try and get a good feel for what these tools do and how they can help you build applications.